Earlier this summer, a good friend of mine, Chip, he asked me a question that changed my life, which was really weird. I mean, you don't expect life-changing questions from a guy named Chip. You expect high fives and finger pistols from a guy named Chip. But his question really shifted my perspective on my financial struggles. The question he asked me was, if you were in therapy with your money, what would your money say to you? And what would you say to your money? Well, if my money could talk, it would have a lot of complaints. It would say, Doug, you neglect me, you're distant, avoidant, and you only give me your attention when there's a problem or you want to use me. Well, no wonder my money keeps trying to break up with me. Now, the irony is that I'm an investment advisor who helps manage hundreds of millions of dollars. However, I have always hated talking about my money. I mean, helping others with their finances is great, but I procrastinate on paying my bills and balancing my budget each month. I mean, I get it done, but sometimes I need a stiff drink to help me get started. And sometimes I need a bigger one when I'm done, depending on how much I've overspent this month. But why? Like, why do I have so much trouble paying my bills, even when I'm in good financial shape? I like money. I love the security it provides. And I love that it helps me to serve others. So why do I struggle so much with my own finances? Well, like all good therapy questions, I had to dig into my childhood to find the answer. It turns out I have PTSD, just slightly different. I have payment traumatic stress disorder. Money has caused me so much heartache that just looking at my finances, that triggers all my horrible memories. But to be financially secure, you gotta face this stuff head on. Triggers be damned. The root of many money issues is that when we suffer money trauma and live under severe financial stress, especially in childhood, it can create an anxious or avoidant relationship to money. Under stress, our limbic systems kick in and tell our lizard brains to fight, flee, freeze, or refinance. The constant stress that many of us feel about our finances, it traps us in a permanent state of fight, flight, or freeze, which then makes us either anxiously attached to money or fearfully avoidant of it. Now, people with the anxious money type, they tend to be in constant fight mode, and they're seeking safety or status from their wealth, and so they become clingy and they obsess over their finances out of fear and insecurity. Now, on the flip side of anxious attachment are people like me, the avoidant money type. We tend to have trouble engaging with our finances. And like in human relationships, it's a fear of commitment. And so we're continually stuck in a flight or freeze response, which means we detach or run away out of fear and insecurity. And now, there are some folks who are a combination of anxious and avoidant. You might anxiously earn a lot of money, but then push money away through overspending or not investing in your future. Now, the technical term for this maneuver is called the MC hammer. Unfortunately, few of us get through life without some money trauma. According to a report in Forbes magazine, 1 out of 4 Americans suffers PTSD symptoms from financial stress. And among millennials, that number rises to 1 in 3. Now, my money trauma started at an early age. Now, growing up in a wealthy family is a privilege. But for me, it was a mixed blessing. My family had nice houses, fancy vacations, plenty of hired help. However, when my parents divorced, total warfare broke out, and their weapon of choice was money. And from my childhood perspective, cash was a tool for domination and control of the battlefield. And all the heartache, rejection, and loneliness that caused us kids was collateral damage. You see, each parent tried to make the other one pay for everything, which meant they had money, they just didn't want to spend any of it on us. Which is why I believed St. Paul when he said that the love of money is the root of all evil. But if loving money is bad, the opposite of loving money is to hate it, which is what I did. It took me decades to realize that my parents' materialism, it wasn't based on greed or selfishness. They both meant well, but they grew up in desperately poor immigrant families, and they suffered severe money trauma themselves. And as with any trauma, it is easily passed from generation to generation. Their childhood money wounds created an anxious attachment to money rooted in fear. And because of their money wounds, they indiscriminately grabbed on to whatever they could and held on like someone clinging to the last life preserver on a sinking ship. Now, I tried to escape that world by joining the Marine Corps. I loved the Marines, and I almost made a career out of it. But in the Marines, I discovered that there are two drugs that do not mix well together: unresolved anger and an M16. Yeah, I needed to find a different career path. So in my quest for meaning after leaving the Marines, another Bible quote hit home. In the book of Matthew, Jesus says to a young man from a wealthy family, "If you want to be perfect, go, sell your possessions, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." Well, to a chronic perfectionist, this was the ultimate throwdown challenge, direct from God. So I gave up everything, took a vow of poverty, and I joined a Benedictine monastery. As a bonus, my parents were flabbergasted. You might not know it, but spite is a reason why many men join religious orders. "You're not my real father. I'm a child of God." I stayed there for 20 years. Now, life in the monastery offered a grand spiritual adventure. Now, in that regard, it did not disappoint. Plus, there's free haircuts, and those robes are super soft. But it turns out that childhood money trauma is common in monks. I mean, who else would take a vow of poverty except for someone with money issues in their closet? Now, to my surprise, I found myself living in a community where everyone had a deeply avoidant relationship to money. Well, this, in due course, led to our monastery going bankrupt. I guess we took the vow of poverty a little too seriously. Well, we quickly went from living a simple, humble life to being desperately poor. We lacked the money to pay our bills, put food on the table, or afford critical medical care. Now, the stress of being desperately poor is unrelenting, and it's the reason why your socioeconomic status is the best predictor of when you are likely to die. Poor people experience higher rates of obesity, drug abuse, alcoholism, child abuse, domestic violence, crime, injury, and poor health. money stress is also one of the leading causes of divorce. And the research tells us that the quality of your financial life has a bigger impact on your perceived well-being than the total combination of your physical fitness, your job satisfaction, and your relationship stability. It's hard to be content when you have to choose between gas in your car or food in your stomach. Now, by an absurd twist of fate, the responsibility for lifting our community out of bankruptcy fell onto my shoulders, even though I was financially illiterate at the time. The blind leading the broke. Eventually, my efforts put our community back on solid ground. And in the process, I learned how to manage money. And then I started helping monastery guests with their often catastrophic financial struggles. But more importantly, because of the suffering that I experienced and witnessed, I finally started loving my neighbor as myself and began practicing the art of compassion. As the Franciscan theologian Richard Rohr wisely said, we grow spiritually much more by doing it wrong than by doing it right. So, what pulled me out of the monastery, and why did I become an investment advisor? Well, because of the suffering I witnessed, I was now capable of loving the world, but I felt trapped in a bubble with limited means of serving the world. And I felt I could do more good outside than inside the monastic walls. And through my experience of true poverty, I realized that money isn't bad. Poverty is. And the only cure for poverty is to have a little bit of wealth. I also realized that it's possible to be a little bit wealthy and do good in the world. And I could start by helping people build a healthier relationship to money that isn't anxiously attached or fearfully avoidant. Now, I learned 3 key wisdom practices during my 20 years in the monastery that work well to help solve any problem, but are especially useful when dealing with money. And they are the practices of contemplation, compassion, and action. Now, there's a 4th practice that also helps, compounding, but that's not mentioned in the Bible. And these 3 wisdom practices appear in every faith tradition, and they're common ground for all world religions. And contemplation is our ability to think through and meditate on complex problems while connecting us to our deepest and our most authentic selves. It shows us where we are and where we need to go, especially when the way forward is hard to see. For me, contemplation revealed that the divine is everywhere, in everyone, and in everything, including my financial life. Now, contemplation can take the form of meditation, prayer, yoga, psychotherapy, journaling, or long hikes in the woods. And anything that helps you slow down and see where are you broken and a little bit crazy in your relationship to money. And most of us have a little crazy somewhere in our financial lives. So, what are some of the negative voices in your head telling you? That you aren't good with money? That you don't deserve money? Or that you deserve all the money? And if you need a little extra help finding what your crazy is, just ask your significant other. They will set you straight. Now, while contemplation is a powerful tool all alone, it's not enough. To heal our money wounds and build a healthier relationship with money, we also need compassion towards ourselves and others. Once you've identified you're crazy and discovered why you might be anxious or avoidant in your financial life, you need to do the tough work of forgiving the people in your past who hurt you. And then the even more difficult task of forgiving yourself for the fear, anxiety, and shame that may surface. For example, I feel ashamed when I have money, and I feel ashamed when I don't have money. Now, we Catholics did not invent guilt, but we certainly perfected it. But first, you need to accept your past and then determine if you are ready to forgive. And next, you need to explore what forgiveness means to you. How will you find meaningful closure, especially if some of the people responsible for your wounding are no longer around? As Lily Tomlin put it so wisely, forgiveness means giving up all hope for a better past. Now, through the practice of compassion and empathy, I was able to mostly forgive my parents and really love them as they deserved. And forgiveness is also the only way to take full responsibility for your life and stop blaming others for your problems. Besides, the quest for someone to blame is always successful. And the blame game only holds you back from reaching your goals. So, who do you need to forgive? The final step in this journey towards healing your money trauma is to take positive action. Now, I took action by learning everything I could about money, which is how I eventually became an investment advisor. Ironically, I would not have the satisfying life and career I do now without my past traumas. If we can redeem our past by finding meaning and strength from our pain, our traumas can transform into sacred wounds that we would never trade away, often called blessings in disguise. If I had a therapy session with my money today, I'd be able to answer back, look, I know we still have issues, but I'm extremely grateful that we are back on speaking terms. So, what actions would be helpful for you? In my journey from Marine to monk to money manager, I learned that you can heal your money trauma through the 3 wisdom practices of contemplation, compassion, and action. You can build a healthier relationship to money, even if, like me, you still need a stiff drink every time you pay your bills. But from that place of healing, you can begin building a little bit of wealth, or you can be a happier and more generous steward of the wealth that you have. Also, always remember, money is not good or bad. Money is just a sponge that absorbs the intent of the user. It's up to each of us to make money a force for good. And with that parable, I just saved you 20 years of living in a monastery. Thank you.